Okay, good evening. It being 6:04 p.m. on Tuesday, April 13th, I call this meeting of the Westborough Board of Selectmen to order. This meeting is being conducted remotely. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing a strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting, including a public hearing, we don't have a public hearing, so this meeting of the Westborough Board of Selectmen will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so via Westborough TV's online platforms, including youtube.com/WestboroughTV, westboroughTV.org, or via the cable channels Charter 192 and Verizon 28. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. So we are here. I do want to let the public know that due to a personal matter, Select Board member Shelby Marshall will not be attending this evening. Sean Keogh is not here yet, but he is expected. Okay. Next on the agenda is our list of open committee positions. We do this every couple of meetings. I'll walk through them again very quickly. And so open committee appointments that are appointed by the town manager include one member of the Board of Health for a 3-year term. The Cable TV Advisory Committee is looking for 2 members. This is an ad hoc committee. We're still looking for 1 constable in a 1-year term. For a 3-year term, 1 person to fill the insect and pest control officer, and 2 members to join on 3-year terms to the Municipal Building Committee. It looks like we found a measurer of wood, so that's pretty cool. For Board of Selectmen appointments, the Council on Aging is looking for 1 member to join for a 3-year term. The Board of Selectmen is looking to fill the alternate member position for the Central Mass Regional Planning Committee, or CMRPC. The Cultural Council has 11 openings for 3-year terms. The Historical Commission is looking for a non-voting member for a 3-year term. Non-voting membership in committees is a great way to learn about the committee and get involved, a stepping stone to further involvement. So it's a great way to get involved. The Housing Partnership Committee has one opening membership for a 3-year term. The Open Space Preservation Committee is also looking for 1 person for a 3-year term. We have a Senior Disabled Taxation Aid Committee. We're looking for 2 members for a 3-year term. The Spirit Committee is looking for 1 person on a 1-year term. Sustainable Westborough is always looking for members. There's no limit and there's no term. There's no term limit. The Westborough Affordable Housing Trust has openings for 2 trustees, a 1-year and a 2-year term each. And the Westborough Housing Authority is looking for 1 person to fill a vacancy in a 5-year elected term. That appointment would be until the next town election, when there would then be a special election to fill that seat. And finally, the town moderator is still looking for to appoint 1 member to the Walkup Robinson Trust Fund Committee. That is also a 3-year term. So with that concluded, next we'll head into the agenda. First on the agenda is open forum. I've been advised that we have no one who's requested to speak at open forum. Okay, and welcome, Sean. And so item 2 on the agenda is the town manager's report.
Thanks. I'm going to go pretty specifically through a couple items, and then I'll just give high level, but these are posted, as a reminder, these are all posted on the town's website following the meeting. An update for the vaccine clinic. You all got the code red today. So the regional clinic, which will be referred to as Metro West Westborough on the state website, will be starting tomorrow. The first day will be just for the 25% of the state allocated as private use for the towns. So you heard about that when Chief Purcell gave his code red today, which filled up very quickly. The last 2 days this week will be open up for anyone in the Commonwealth. Each of the 7 towns are allocated 60 doses. So that's what you heard today. Chief Purcell will be sending out the private link, which we did. And then we're hoping that every week we get a minimum of the 60 doses that are specific to the town. We are still encouraging all residents to sign up on the state's pre-registration website. So we received, for the clinic, we received 1,500 doses. The ones that are not specific to the town will be allocated through the state's registration program. So it's very important that people pre-register through the state site. The site takes geography into consideration when asking residents to sign up for a time slot. The goal is to be open every week, a minimum of 3 days, depending on the vaccine shipped to us. As I said, this week we got 1,500. As we gear up the clinic, we may be able to double the amount in the next few weeks. So I just want to say, Chief Purcell, Ray Gothier, the entire health department staff, and working with the other communities have been working very, very hard on this, and we're really excited to see it come to fruition this week. We have suspended the homebound program temporarily due to the suspension of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but we're following the recommendations of the Department of Public Health and how that moves forward. The town received, and I'm very excited to share, that we received our first ever Distinguished Budget Award through the Government Finance Officers Association for our FY 2021 budget document. This was the first budget document that was developed using the GFOA best practices, and the purpose was to create an information tool for the community. The GFOA budget raters rated our document as proficient or outstanding in almost every category, with all 3 raters giving an outstanding for department descriptions and unit goals and objectives. Specifically, they commented, overall, the document is well formatted and laid out, conveys meaningful information, and is easy to use. Staff should be commended for their efforts. This is a great budget document. Well done. So we're really proud of that. And we want to say thanks to all of the department heads who worked on that. And then we have 2 vacancies, or 2 pretty significant vacancies. Our health director, as you all know, we've completed a first round of interviews, and we hope to recommend finalists to the Board of Health for their consideration at the end of the month. And then our conservation director, Jordan McCarron, will be leaving his position at the end of this month, so we'll be working on filling that position over the next few weeks. And then for the department updates, the Board of Health update, they welcomed a new hire at the beginning of the month. And then they've been working very hard on the regional vaccine clinic. In the conservation department, they're working on scheduling a outdoor dedication ceremony for the Zwicker Farm Conservation Area on Saturday, March 1st. They're also working with Sudbury Valley trustees to host a garlic mustard pull on April 24th. And there's a link on this that people can look at. The Conservation Commission's also been working on principles and policies for land management and stewardship. The Department of Public Works launched its sector maintenance program this month. They have also received the backhoe that was funded during the 2020 annual town meeting. As everyone's aware, Danny Moynihan retired after 48 years of service, and they want to thank the WPD, WFD, and DPW employees for the truck parade send-off on his last day, for which he was really appreciative. Over the next 90 days, residents can expect to see road sweeping, pavement, crack sealing, and line painting and road resurfacing. Specific dates are being scheduled now, and then once timing is confirmed, they'll push that out through the town's website and Facebook. Fire department received 3 grants this week, totaling $23,000 for firefighting gear, fire education, and senior citizen safety. Their training division recently was loaned a Connex box that was a replica in the inside of a house, and they were able to work with the Southborough Fire Department to conduct training. They have also been working on the homebound vaccinations. The planning board approved the definitive subdivision plan for West Park Drive extension. They opened the public hearing for 4400 Computer Drive on April 6th. And then they also approved the gas line relocation serving Pulte Home Stell Webb Chauncey Lake project. The police department, they received 2 trial body-worn cameras, and they were also notified that Representative Greg Warr has requested budgetary funding for the balance of the money due. And if we were to receive that, we could reduce or possibly eliminate that warrant article at the upcoming May town meeting. And that's my report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is we've got a visitor, Ed Bain, who would like us to declare April as Organ Donation Month. This has been an item on the agenda in April for a few consecutive years. So I will introduce Ed. Ed, if you can identify yourself and where you live, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I'm Ed Bain. I live at 5 Thomas Rice Drive here in Westborough, and I have a quick presentation I'm going to try to do. It just has a couple of slides to bring you up to date state of organ donation. So let's see if I can do this. I'm just going to get the PowerPoint up. And can people see that? I don't know if you're seeing the presenter's view or the full screen. Alan?
We are not seeing your screen share yet.
Are you seeing any? You're not?
No, nothing.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, there we go. We see the presentation view, the screenshot.
Right. Screenshot. Okay, great. So anyhow, as I said, I'm Ed Bain. I'm an outreach volunteer with New England Donor Services, and I'm here today to ask that the Board of Selectmen declare April as Donate Life Month here in Westborough. It is considered Donate Life Month throughout the U.S. So a couple of things. I can move forward here. There we go. Okay. So why are there need for organ donation and organ donors? On average, about 22 people a day die waiting for an organ. About every 10 minutes, another name is added who needs an organ recipient. And only about 1% of deaths that do occur present the possibility of organs being donated by that individual. Just to give a scope or a framework, there's 108,000 people currently on the waiting list for an organ. If you put that in perspective, that could fill Fenway, Gillette, and the Garden with those 108,000, completely fill those 3 venues. The kinds of things that can be donated, there's organs and there's tissues. And as you can see from that chart, we have hearts, lungs, kidneys, liver, intestines, pancreas, and a variety of tissues that can help people heal, if not in some cases save lives. And the largest need is for kidneys. That's about over 80% of the need is for kidney donation. So how do people help? Well, the easiest way, first of all, is to become a registered organ donor. And you can do that, if you have not already, by going to registerme.org. You can do it in the health app on an iPhone, or on your driver's license renewal form, you can check the yes box that you wish to be an organ donor. So thank you for that time, and I'll turn it back over to Alan, and I'm also open for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ed. So I'll put this out to the board. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, seeing none, our motion would be to move with the proclamation that's been provided. So as it's written, is me making the proclamation. I will I'll make that motion, which so I move that we present to New England Donor Services the following proclamation. Whereas there are more than 108,000 Americans with more than 6,000 in New England who are currently waiting for life-saving organ transplant, And whereas there are over 1 million life-enhancing tissue transplants each year that are made possible by the generous donation of corneas, bone, skin, or other tissue, and whereas we can all help to save someone's life and benefit up to 50 recipients by signing up to become an organ and tissue donor by enrolling in the Massachusetts Donor Registry when we apply for or renew our driver's licenses, or by registering online at www.registerme.org. And whereas Massachusetts is a leader in donor designation rates and is dedicated to make it fast and easy to sign up to save a life through our registry of motor vehicles. And whereas this observance pays tribute to the organ and tissue donors and their families whose decision to donate life enables others to receive life-saving organs and tissues for transplant. Now, therefore, I, Alan Edinburgh, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the entire Board of Selectmen of Westborough, Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim April 2021 to be Donate Life Month, and urge all the citizens of Westborough, Massachusetts to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Moved in second.
Well read, Alan.
Pardon?
Well read.
Thank you. New glasses. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? No, then we'll do a roll call vote. Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion passes on a vote of 4-0-0, 4 being present. Thank you very much, Ed, for coming this evening.
Yes, and thank you, thank the board. And also I want to give a special thanks to Sila, who actually reached out to me in March asking if I'd like this presentation to be done and the proclamation to be read. So thank you very much, Sila. I'm sure you can listen to me. And I'll sign off for tonight. Good night, all.
Good night. Have a good evening. Okay, next on the agenda is a discussion vote on a water mutual aid agreement, which will be presented. I don't know, Chris, do you have some introduction, or should I just hand the floor to Chris?
I think Chris can have the floor.
Chris, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everybody. I think it's pretty straightforward. So we're recommending that the town become a member of the Massachusetts Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network, so MassWARN. This is just a network of towns, specifically water utilities from around the state that basically sign up to be participants and agree to provide mutual aid to other towns in the event of a disaster, whether it's natural disaster or some man-made thing. So seems like I think it's a smart thing for us to do, to be a participant. There's no cost to it. There's no obligation to respond to anything, but it certainly opens up opportunities for us to get resources from other towns if we need it, and demonstrates that Westborough is, committed to supporting the state if those resources that we have might be available or be made available to help someone else around the state somewhere, most likely a local town, a town surrounding us. So I'm asking for the board to consider that, and I'd recommend we agree to that, sign up for it. We'd submit the agreement to the MassWARN headquarters, for lack of a better term, and we'd become participants immediately. And then we're in their network and available to reach out to other towns for not just in the event of emergency, but I think it just offers us opportunities to get exposure to other communities that maybe we hadn't seen before and introduced to you before, and network and learn as information shared. So I think it's a win-win for us. And tonight, just asking for your approval to join this MassWARN.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain the motion.
I'll move to approve the town of Westborough's participation in the Mass Water Wastewater Agency Response Network, MassWARN, and to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement on the town's behalf.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go for a roll call vote. Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes a vote by a vote of 4-0-0 for being present. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. So next up, we have something very exciting. Is the Fred Leonardo, our Community Development Director, and Zach Bonner. Am I pronouncing it right?
That's correct, yes. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, are here. He's our new Economic Development Coordinator, and he's here to be introduced to us, so we get to know him. So I'll turn over the floor to Fred.
Great, thank you for having us tonight. So Zach has been with us for a few weeks. He's completely immersed himself into his duties already. The town entered into a grant program through the state. The state program is using this consulting firm called Haggerty. And what they're doing right now, what Zach is predominantly doing in the last week or so, is what's called a local rapid recovery program. So he's actually working with this Haggerty group. He's going through downtown businesses, surveying them, and trying to come up with goals or initiatives, if you will, that can ultimately be implemented through the town for businesses in the downtown area. So that's what Zach is presently working on, and he can tell you his background a little bit.
Thanks, Fred. I want to start off by saying thank you all for having me and for being so welcoming. I'm very excited to be here, and I've been very excited to roll my sleeves up the past couple weeks and get to work. A little bit about my background is that I'm coming from the world of consulting. I was previously a management consultant at McKinsey & Company, where I was introduced to the field of economic development and did several projects related to economic development at both the state and federal level. I received my undergraduate education at Columbia University, where I studied political science and computer science. And I'm really excited to be helping a local community grow and develop in a sustainable and inclusive way, and help our town think about strategies to make the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic easier on our business community. So I feel very privileged to be here and to be somebody who is helping in that effort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board? Ian.
Alan, yeah, just a comment, and I was able to. I ran into Zach and Kim the other day, so I was able to welcome him personally, at least behind a mask. But very excited to have you on board. It's a important position for us. It's exciting to hear what you're working on already, as Fred described. But really look forward to working with you and having you part of the team here. And I think you'll. If you haven't already, you're going to get to love Westborough. It's a great community, a great staff that you'll be working with. Hopefully, you'll think we're a great board. We do, but it really is a community that is inclusive, works well together, and we look forward to working with you and supporting you.
Thanks, Ian. Likewise, echo the sentiment, and I've already started to fall in love with this community. So.
Okay, Sean.
Yeah, Zach, welcome aboard. I think this is a very interesting time for Westborough. I think, well, for all communities coming out of the pandemic, hopefully, but also I think Westborough is, from a business standpoint, on a little bit of a development trajectory currently in the short term, and I think there are some real opportunities there for the town of Westborough, and I'm looking forward to working with you on those. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
Patrick?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Both well said by Ian and Sean. Just to say welcome, and I look forward to meeting you in person and hearing about all the great things that you do. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks. Look forward similarly.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us here this evening. It's nice to meet you. As a member of the EDC, I suspect the biggest challenge will be taking the mountain of ideas and possibilities and narrowing it down to the, most critical and impactful things for, on which you'll focus your time. And so, definitely look forward to working with you.
That's what a trained consultant is good at, though. So
that is true. That is true.
Wait until you see my PowerPoint slides.
Okay, great. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for the introduction, and welcome aboard. Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
So next up is discussion about warrant Article 17 on the annual town meeting warrant, which is an article to establish a disability commission. And here, leading that effort to speak on it is Fred Leonardo, our ADA coordinator.
Sure. Again, thank you. So the best way to describe what this committee would do is through my past experience, I had the pleasure of serving on as a technical advisor, if you will, of the board for almost 3.5 years in Lexington. So the easiest way to talk about it is just kind of describe some of the projects they got involved in and some of the things they would hear. So that board had a monthly meeting, that committee. They would often hear projects brought forward by the town or local businesses. Some of the town projects, for instance, would be if the school department wanted to create an outdoor classroom, what the accessibility issues would be to that classroom. So the committee would offer suggestions to the school facilities department on how they could implement an outdoor classroom, what they could do to make it accessible to the different students. That would be a type of project they'd work on. The town clerk presented voting machines, how you can approach the disabilities connected with voting machines, both visually and hearing impaired, how they have to deal with town equipment and how they'd actually use the voting machines and what type of machines would actually aid in response and helping to have voters use those machines. That was a different projects they got involved in. And when I say involved, generally town staff would bring that proposition to the board or the committee, and the committee would offer recommendations and would write a recommendation letter if need be. Outside businesses, if they applied for a variance through the Mass Architectural Access Board, as part of that process, that committee is asked to write a letter either in support or whatever recommendations to that board, the Mass Architectural Access Board, in reference to a variance application. That's another process they got involved in. And basically meeting rooms. So they often had discussions with town facilities with meeting rooms. For instance, the Great Hall or the Select Board meeting room, as far as different disabilities that are affected when people attend those meetings. A lot of them actually went to hearing impairment too. So that, again, the committee would get involved in different suggestions on how to improve those meeting rooms and what can be done to meet some of the disabilities that are there. So serving on that as technical advisor on that board, I virtually knew nothing about disabilities when I started with that board. I learned a tremendous amount and still only know a fraction of what goes into dealing with different disabilities. A lot of time people, they automatically go to somebody that's, they can't transport themselves, so they'll look at a wheelchair. That's like, people kind of stop there, but there's so many other disabilities that people don't even think about that the committee was able to shed light on and help local businesses in the town get through those. So those are just kind of anecdotally how the committee interacts with the community. I guess I'd open up from questions from here.
Okay. Any questions? Before we open up for questions, I know in our packet you shared the Mass General Law and that there's some specific requirements about membership. Mm-hmm. So can you speak, and you're recommending a 7-member commission. Can you speak to who would be serving on that commission?
Well,
some of those requirements?
Yeah, generally it was, not all the members would necessarily have a disability themselves. A lot of times it was family members or people they were associated with. Sometimes it was architectural too, so landscaping, architectural, people that had familiarity with disabilities and how to overcome those. Those are typically the members of boards, these committees.
Okay, great. Any questions from the board? Okay, not seeing any, I will, there's no motion necessary. This is just a discussion about the warrant article. And so if any further questions come up, we'll address them before. Oh, Sean?
I would just say, since there's no vote or anything, I would just sort of make it, not a question, but a comment. That I think this makes a lot of sense. I think if we are focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, that this commission, it would go away towards answering a lot of questions that come about because of those issues. And I think it sounds like an intelligent decision to make. So thank you very much, Fred.
Sure.
Yeah, Alan, just if I could just again, we're not voting on this, but the comment is a warrant article. I'm fully supportive. As Sean said, I think it makes a lot of sense. And as being the rep on the municipal building committee and seeing some things that have happened or questions around ADA, concerns or issues that may have come up there, I can see the role that this will play, and actually I think would help Fred out as well in his role. So I think it is definitely a worthwhile route for us to take.
Okay.
So we've also we just recently, as the board is aware, within the last 2 years have completed our ADA self-assessment. And so that's when we really designated Fred as the ADA coordinator and created some policies. So this is really good timing for us as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nothing further, then we can move on. Thank you, Fred, for joining us and providing the information. Okay, next on our agenda this evening is, was added to the agenda at the request of Selectman Marshall, who's unfortunately unable to join us this evening. It is a discussion and vote to affirm the anti-racism statement by Youth and Family Services and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. In our packets, we have the statement that was sent out and made public. And so I will open this up for discussion of the board. Or to entertain the motion. Sean.
Yeah, I would just say, if unfortunately Shelby isn't here tonight, but if she was, I would thank her for bringing this forward. This makes a lot of sense. So
I would,
Patrick?
I would just add, I appreciate certainly Shelby and the entire team from Youth and Family Services and the Youth Commission for writing this and bringing it forward. I personally have family members who come from the Asian community, so I fully support this and endorse it, and I'm glad to see it happen. Thank you.
Okay, great. Ian, any comment or discussion?
No, I think fully supportive, and
Okay.
we'll look to Sean and Patrick if they want to make a motion. I'm fully supportive of it.
Sure, I can make the motion. I move to affirm the anti-racism statement made by the Westborough Youth and Family Services and the Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And so Welch moves and Johnson seconds. I don't want to take up too much time, but I feel this is an important thing for us to do. It further extends the commitment to prior statements and declarations we've made around racial injustice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I think this is continuing that to support that viewpoint and that change in perspective and in culture. And so I appreciate that the members of the board here and Shelby in her absence support this. I do as well. And so that said, if there's no further discussion, we'll move to the roll call vote. Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keough.
Yo, yes.
Johnson,
Johnson, yes.
and Edinburgh, yes. So it passes 4-0-0, 4 being present. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is a discussion and vote to approve the 2021 Selectmen's goals and town manager goals. So if you give me just a second, I can.
Do you want me to put them up?
Yeah, I was just going to do that.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so these, to provide some context for, for the viewers at home, at our retreat a couple of weeks ago, we, as sort of the tradition and the practice, following the election with the addition of new members, we step back, we look at where we are with respect to the strategic plan. We look at the outstanding, the prior year's goals for both the select board and the town manager. We identify the, those that are complete and identify new goals that we want to pursue going forward. Is part of the consideration of our goals is making sure that obviously they're measurable, they're attainable, they're timely, and they have some priority to them. Also things that we feel we can complete. And also when looking at the number of goals, making sure that we also leave sufficient time among our schedule and our meeting schedule to address the issues that aren't as predictable as our annual goals that come up from time to time, sometimes more frequently than others. So on the screen are the 6 goals we discussed and who would be the lead involved for each of those goals. With respect to property management, Sean and Patrick expressed an interest. I'm involved in the discussions around Post 85 and the Forbes building. And so for clarification on this, I would continue to see that through to conclusion, but the broader facilities review that's on the ATM warrant and policies on property management for municipal buildings not occupied by town departments, Sean and Patrick would take the lead on that. So if there, the other, actually just for everyone at home, read the goals for the select board. Property management, municipal buildings not occupied by town departments. This is to come up with policy and resolve outstanding issues, identify appropriate building use. Goal 2 is property management. We are anticipating the acquisition of other properties in town, and that will require time and effort. This includes potentially the Regal Cinema building, the Allen building at the State Hospital, and any recommendations from the Land Prioritization Committee that as they undertake their work. The third goal is a charter review specific in line with recommendations from the staffing plan and other work that's been done prior to explore the reporting authority of the town planner, the Board of Health, and the town clerk. Item number 4 is to do an update to our strategic plan. It was designed to take a 2 to 3 year look ahead. We're past 3 years at this point. We're approaching 3 years, so now's the time to do that. Number 5 is to review and update current board policies. If you go to our website, the Board of Selectmen has a number of policies. Over the last couple of years, we've seen some of them were woefully out of date. We updated our social media policy, which was previously written in 2010 when the world was very different. And so this would take a step back and look at all of those policies and determine which should be updated and what updates are appropriate. And then we continue to work on the committee guidelines and handbook, which is setting a standard set of guidelines for how committees operate, transparency, accountability, public access to information, things of that nature.
Alan, can I just
Sure.
add? So by process, these are full board goals, even though there's leads identified.
Yes.
And so these would be, these will come up on a future agenda for the board to discuss how they want to approach each of these goals. And then we could move forward. And then the lead might be someone who would work with town staff specifically on the goal. And then we would bring it back to the board for discussion.
Okay. Thank you for filling in that missing information that I skipped over. Okay. So any questions or concerns? This reflects what we've done. So at that, I guess we should probably do separate motions and votes for the board goals than the town manager goals.
That's fine.
So
Okay.
I'll move to approve the 2021 goals for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Second.
Johnson moves, Keough seconds. Not seeing any further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Welch?
Welch, yes.
Keough?
Keough, yes.
Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the Board of Selectmen goals passes 4-0-0 for present. Okay, town manager goals. Christy, do you want to walk through them
Sure.
quickly?
Yep. So we're going to continue to update the capital plan to the comprehensive documents. We've talked about this previously, where we had a capital plan and we had capital items, but it was sort of limited in scope. And so last year, the board adopted a new policy, capital planning policy, and we had a new process, and we're continuing to fill out that process by working on the document so that we can have a document that it identifies capital needs over the next 5 years, but also looks to future capital projects that we know are coming so that we can have a full picture of what their capital needs are. So we'll continue to work on that. We need to update our personnel policies. That document has had some tweaks to it, but hasn't had a full update, I think, since 2013. So we're looking forward to that. Inclusive of that is looking at our hiring practices with respect to diversification of candidate pools. And that's something that I know has been discussed at the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, was also part, I believe, of the community statement that the Selectmen put out over the summer. Our communication plan, which we put out, I think, in January, we're working on implementation of that. So inclusive of that is the website update, looking at the content and usability. This is something that we want to do internally initially, because we think that there's some low-hanging fruit that we can identify as staff. And then ultimately, we would love to talk about some sort of focus group or community participation in terms of the usability of the website and how it looks. And then also, I think Fred's group, the Commission on Disability, would be helpful as well as we move through updating the website. Review of our technology needs and make recommendations. This is something that was called out in the staffing study and something that we're focused on for the upcoming year. Review of fees. That was a previous year. Oh, I think I skipped over. So 2 previous year's goals was the use of alcohol in town buildings and facility use. And that's something that that we're working on drafting policies. And then also a review of fees is a previous goal that sort of fell off as we dealt with the pandemic. And then review the comprehensive fiscal management policies with recommendations specific to unfunded pension and OPEB. This is something that we've talked about many years in a row. OPEB, more important most recently, as we've taken that out of the budget as a result of high increases and then also the pandemic. Wanting the community to understand what our plan is for funding going forward, reminding everyone what our funding schedule was and why it became what it was previously. And then evaluate the need for a procurement officer or grant coordinator. This came out of the staffing study. And I think we also heard through our budget summit that there's an interest in having someone overseeing both procurement and also grant management, because we do have our departments work very hard at obtaining grants, and having someone to support them in that through grant management would be very helpful. And then the needs assessment for the senior center or intergenerational community center. That's something that came out of the 2018 strategic plan. We have looked into getting that started in terms of working with the community to evaluate the needs of seniors and the interests of seniors. But obviously the pandemic was not well suited for that, since what we really need is a lot of community engagement as we work through that process. So that's something that we are hoping, as we come out of the pandemic, that we can be productive in this, so we can once we can get together.
Okay. I will point out that the policy for the use of alcohol in town buildings is tied to events that may be held in the building and just not day-to-day operations.
Right.
That we've seen interest in people renting out town buildings and facilities for use for weddings and other celebrations. And so that is sort of driving that. And I believe we had our first wedding at Lake Chauncey.
We did. Yes.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
So if there, any final questions, we discussed this at length during the retreat.
So just to give the additional information I gave previously, so by process, these are town manager goals, but certainly working with all of the department heads to accomplish these over the next year.
Okay. So if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the 2021 goals for the town manager as presented.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Roll call vote. Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keogh.
Keogh, yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes by a vote of 4-0-0, 4 being present. Excellent. So next on our agenda, we're moving right along here, is discussion.
Don't say that.
I know. I
You just jinxed it.
I shouldn't jinx myself. Is a discussion and possible vote on our liaison program and committee assignments. And so let me pull this up. So as I'm sharing my screen, I can introduce the topic by pointing out to the folks that the role of a member of the Board of Selectmen isn't just attending these meetings and looking good on TV. Members of the Board of Selectmen also hold seats on other, by design and by design on other boards and committees. And given the number of appointed committees with town volunteers, it's our intent to have some form of liaison, so that if a committee's working on an issue and they have a question that would head our way to the board, they'd have a point of contact. They'd have someone on the board periodically check in, what's going on, what's on your agenda, anything that they might want us to share through issues and correspondence, as opposed to coming in and doing a formal presentation. So the liaison responsibilities are really, making ourselves available, tracking the work of the committees, reading minutes, staying in touch, attending a couple meetings per year, or if requested for specific matters, and then as appropriate, providing updates back to the board here during issues and correspondence when that's needed. Whereas when we hold a seat, it's full responsibility of being the member of that committee, attending the meetings, actively participating, as well as bringing updates back to the board. So what we have here is, because I'm a nerd, an interactive spreadsheet. So it describes the committee, the board, and the team, sort of sorted here between ones where we hold seats and ones where we would be liaison. The color coding here of the check marks are, the green check marks are seats that we're currently occupying that we're interested in continuing in. Yellow is something we're interested in joining, we're not necessarily on, or it's a seat we may hold where we're okay moving out of that seat or out of that role. And so I will, having gotten some input from Shelby and Ian prior to the meeting and filling it in. Oh, and the reason Country Club Operating Committee doesn't have a check is because that's been merged into the Recreation Department. And so Ian has asked to liaison with the Recreation Department and continue his work in that role there. So I will start with Patrick to get a sense of your interest.
Alan, can I actually, so the Climate Action Plan Task Force is going to be dissolving after the board of selectmen here's the item at your next meeting. And so I know that they're planning to dissolve and continue their work through the Sustainable Westborough Committee.
Well, that's too bad because I was going to volunteer for that one. So do I get credit for that?
Yeah, you accomplished a ton. Look at you.
You accomplished a ton. Well done, Patrick.
And then I would also say that the COVID task force is not a committee. And so we need to be really clear about that. It's really just a group, a community group that gets together. So I don't think that we should list it on this.
Okay. So we'll take that one out of contention as well.
Okay.
Okay. So Patrick, where do your interests lie?
So I did actually have climate action plan, so I wasn't joking with that one. But the three that I kind of tagged as possibilities or that I'd be interested in are the Council on Aging, the Planning Board, and Sustainable Westborough. And I'm assuming that we're not talking about changing any of the current assignments. I certainly have an interest in the COVID task force, but I heard that just changed now, but there might be some other opportunities there as well.
Okay. And Sean?
So sorry. Like I said, the COVID task force is not an actual committee. So Patrick, you would be able to participate if you wanted to, attend one of their meetings. They meet monthly, and it's just whoever can attend. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick, you volunteered.
Well, I don't want to take Shelby's seat. Did I see that she was still signed up for that?
There's no seats.
Or
No
whatever.
seats, so it's
Okay.
just participation.
So we can just participate as long as
there's not three of us.
there's not three of us. Exactly what I was going to say.
Right.
Okay.
So Ian and Sean and I have been boxed out. Okay. Sean, where do your interests lie?
Yeah, I would be happy to be the alternate to the CMRPC I don't know how much effort it actually requires to be the alternate. I guess you're just on standby. If that makes sense.
Well, Sean, just on that one, I think that the way it works is that the alternate would be attending the meetings. You just would, I think it's in the way it's worked in the past, that there's the kind of the voting member, then the alternate. The alternate member does fill in if the voting member's not there, but typically we've had kind of both attend those CMRPC meetings.
Gotcha. So I could still report back to the board. I just typically would not be voting at the meeting or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And if CMRPC was working on a project and had a subcommittee you were interested in, you would be able to volunteer for that as well.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah. Also, I don't know if down below there was a couple of senior tax committees, and I think I'd be happy to participate on both of those. Or I see somebody's checked.
That's okay.
Well, we have, and I guess I needed clarification on this. We have senior disabled taxation relief. And then there's there's the taxation aid committee, which is the standing committee that's part of the charter.
Neither.
Or about part of the bylaws.
Neither. The Senior Taxation Aid Committee manages and reviews applications to give relief to seniors from a fund that is funded from taxpayers who want to provide extra support for seniors in the community. And so that group reviews those applications. The Senior Taxation Relief Committee was set up a couple years ago to look at opportunities for relieving taxpayers. So they brought a couple different articles to town meeting that increased, I think, veterans benefits and senior tax work-off benefits. And I think their next step, though I think they got a little bit derailed because of the pandemic, was to look at potential relief to long-term residents.
Okay, so Sean, and I guess Sean and Ian, do your interests lie in one of those more than the other? I mean, how? Right
The Senior
now,
Taxation Aid Committee is pretty confidential in terms of reviewing the
Okay.
application, so I'm not sure it requires a liaison. The chief assessor is part of that and the town treasurer.
Okay.
No, I think, Ian, if you're interested in both of those, I'm willing to do the youth commission. There's nobody associated with that.
Yeah, and Sean, if you want to do that, I put those on there, but I would, I'm looking here, if we want to move Sean into the one that isn't the confidential one, because it sounds like we don't need a liaison there, but then I'd be happy to do Walk Up Robinson. I think it may fall into some of the stuff I'm doing on land prioritization anyways, so I'd be happy to switch over to that one.
I just actually got a text from our chief assessor who said that they actually need a volunteer to sit on the Senior Taxation Aid Committee. So even though there isn't a formal selectman seat, one of the selectmen as a resident could sit on that committee.
Sean, you got it.
All right. Thank you, Ian.
Okay. And so for the relief committee, it would be liaison, because that committee's fully staffed, correct?
I'm not sure if it's fully staffed, but it could be a liaison position at this point. There was no selectman sitting on it previously.
Okay. And this will, so Sean will take a seat on, he'll be our liaison to the Senior Disabled Taxation Aid Committee, and we can make that appointment to have a seat as a resident.
Okay.
And help with that. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, be willing to sit on the youth commission or be the liaison to the youth commission.
Excellent.
Yeah, I did see, I think a couple people are already associated with the EDC. At a future time, I'd be interested in that committee.
Okay. I mean, I am on that committee now, and I'm happy to transition off. I know Shelby sat on it, and with my continued work with the Affordable Housing Trust, it's I'm not sure long term I've got the time to commit to the EDC that it really is going to need. So Shelby's expressed an interest, and Sean as well. So I'm going to mark both, and it might be good to have, I don't think we need to finalize that today because the appointment would be, I believe, effective July 1st.
Okay.
On the cycle on that committee. That's what happened when Shelby stepped off. They made me wait till July 1st to join. So, but it doesn't have to be. We can do it earlier. But
Okay.
we could sort of have that conversation. Should I suggest that you and Shelby chat
All right.
and to see where interest lies, and I can transition off that committee, and it's a good time to make a change with Zach coming on board, with goals and goals being set, and a lot of initiatives going forward.
All right. And then I don't know if there's anything else that currently doesn't have a liaison where there's something going on where folks think it would be important for us to be represented.
No, I think I'm just looking through the list. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. I think we're pretty well covered. We could always, the liaison roles can be a little more fluid, as things come up. Let me just make sure we've got all of our seats covered.
Alan,
I don't know that this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, Alan, I was just going to say, I don't see anybody on school. So if that's still open and.
Okay, so yeah, school, sure, I've lost my column headers here, hold on. Okay, I mean, we do, having used liaison school committee is fine. We do now meet with the school committee in a joint meeting at least once a year to kick off the budget cycle. And then we actually, I guess you'd say, meet with them too on budget day in January as we go through.
What is the expectation of school? Is it? I know they meet. I think it's every other week. Is the expectation to go every other week, or is it a monthly kind of thing, or what?
I think it's just tracking what's on their agenda and what issues they're dealing with. And if if the school committee wanted to approach our board with anything, they'd reach out to you as a point of contact.
Okay.
Or if they had a question.
I'd be happy to do that.
Right. And then the other channel between the school department is part of the department heads and Christy and the management team. There is daily interaction with the superintendent, Christy, and the other department heads as well. So there's very good information flow there and coordination. Okay. Okay, so pending a discussion on EDC, I think we've got things covered. We can always adapt as necessary. Do we need a formal vote on this?
I don't think you need a formal vote on the liaisons. I think the appointments we would put on a future agenda.
Okay, yeah. So we'll bring any appointments back on a future agenda, and we've got concurrence on the liaison program. Okay.
Sounds good.
Stop presenting. Thank you. Okay, so next is.
Hey, Alan, just one quick question on that. Will you send that out to everybody, or?
Yeah, I'll send this out. I'll recode it. Okay. Color-wise, now that we've made commitments, and I'll send it out. Okay, let me just pull up my agenda again. So next on the list on the agenda is our appointment of a burial agent. So, this is one of those town jobs that I didn't know we had, but we do. So I will let Christy introduce it and set the stage for our discussion.
So if you don't know, the burial agent is responsible for examining the death record for any errors or omissions and assigns the burial permit number to the death certificate. So we have historically had our Board of Health Director function as the burial agent, and currently we don't have anyone in that position. So Ray Gauthier, our sanitarian, who's been filling in as the acting health director, I would like to appoint him as burial agent. Under the charter is the town manager's appointment, but it has concurrence by the Board of Selectmen. So I'm asking that you concur with my appointment so he can move forward. And then when we hire a new director, we would make the change again.
Okay, any questions? Okay, I'll entertain the motion.
I'll move to concur with the town manager's appointment of Ray Gauthier as the burial agent. Sorry.
Thank you, Patrick.
Second.
And second by Sean Keogh. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Welch?
Welch, yes.
Keough?
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it is approved. Vote of 400 for being present. Next on the agenda is another appointment, and this is for Paul Freeman Jr. to the Veterans Advisory Board. Christy, if you'd like to introduce this.
Sure. Did not have this up, so I apologize.
I've got it.
So, yeah, I got it. So, Mr. Freeman volunteered to be on the Veterans Advisory Board. He is a member of the, he's a lifetime member of the UFW, a trustee, and a member of the American Legion. And he's volunteered to be, hold on. He was a member of the Veterans Advisory Board that expired, and his membership expired on June 30th, 2020. And so he'd like to be appointed again.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll move to appoint Paul Freeman Jr. to the Veterans Advisory Board for a term to expire June 30th, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Roll call vote. Selectman Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
Welch.
Welch, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So he's appointed by a vote of 400 for being present. Congratulations, Mr. Freeman, and thank you for your service to our veterans and our community. Okay, next on the agenda is the annual town meeting warrant. We have an updated revision, and so I will hand the floor to Christy to introduce.
Yep, I actually wanted to also give an update on the budget. So I have one slide that I'd like to share.
Okay. It does say budget and annual town meeting warrant, so.
So as the board is aware, but maybe not everyone is, at the federal level, they approved the American Rescue Plan. And that's an effort from the local government to provide relief to those impacted by the pandemic, to include municipalities and also school systems. And so we estimate that the town of Westborough will be receiving $5.6 million through the American Rescue Plan. And that's an amount of money. A certain amount of that would come directly to the town, and then a little over $3 million is actually slated to come to the county. But since we don't have a formal county government, it would actually be dispersed to the town. So this was approved just after the 1st of March, and the Treasury Department gave themselves 60 days to issue guidelines, and they intend to use all 60 days. So we do not have a full guidelines, but we know that there are certain buckets that the American Rescue Plan money can be used for. So one is residential and commercial relief. One is revenue loss. One is water, sewer, and telecommunication infrastructure projects, and then other relief related to COVID-19. So one of the things that we've done as a finance team is we have looked at how we might use the money for revenue loss. This is something that we would, we are not recommending that we use all of the money for revenue loss, but we feel that, I'm just trying to pull this up. We feel that we would use some of the money for revenue loss because it would impact the entire, it would have a positive impact on the entire community. And so we met with the finance team last week, and we talked through how we might use the money for revenue loss. And I'm just going to pull this up quickly. So I just want to be really clear that because we haven't received full guidance, this is just a proposal at this point, and we would have this as a future agenda item to have a full discussion. But you can see here that Westborough is slated for $1.8 million in municipal aid, and then we are eligible for another $3.7 million. So that gives us the full 5.6. And so we're recommending that we would use the money for revenue loss in FY21 equal to the amount of free cash that we used in FY21 to lower the tax rate. And so because we would have this amount of revenue, we lost more than this amount of revenue, but we certainly wouldn't want to use all of the money to recoup revenue loss because we're not sure how quickly all of these programs would be coming back. And so this would allow us in FY21 to recognize additional funds that would eventually close out to free cash. And then it would put that $770,000 that we had previously used for out of free cash to lower the tax rate back into the town's free cash. So I'm going to stop there just to make sure, just to see if anyone has any questions, because I know that this can get complicated.
Patrick?
So I'm sorry, it's quite small on my screen, but I guess, did I see that your proposal is, I can't quite read it.
Christy, can you maximize the PDF? There you go.
So 4.8 million, over 4.8 million to revenue loss, and then?
No, 770, the 770.
Oh, okay, all right.
That would be the balance.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
Ian?
Yeah, so Christy, so the remainder there after 21 and 22, and so I may have missed this, so the 4.3 or whatever that remains there, what is the thoughts around that?
Sure. So I haven't gotten there yet. So I was just going with FY21. So FY21, the idea would be that even though we know we lost more than this in revenue loss, the way that we understand the American Rescue Plan to work is that we can compare back to 2019 revenue totals. But we would not recommend that we would use the full amount to get us back to fiscal 19, because we don't anticipate that we will quickly come back. And so we would be using this money, which obviously will go away, and we wouldn't want to create a year in the future if where the residents would then have to be responsible for coming up with that additional revenue if all of these restaurants and excise tax and all these things don't come back. So that's for fiscal 21. We would use $770,000 in fiscal 21, and that money would close out to free cash because we've already set the tax rate and we already have the budget in place. So then going down to fiscal 22, we looked at after the third quarter where we're at with all of our revenues, and so we would recommend revenue replacement in FY22 totaling that $490,000. And so that would, provide relief in FY22 for revenues lost compared to FY19. And that would get us down to that 4.3 million at the end of FY22 with using the American Rescue Plan money.
Question, how far out into the future can we continue to use this money?
They said 2024.
2020, okay. Fiscal 2024. Okay. Fiscal.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would assume fiscal 24. They've just said 2024, so we're waiting. But yeah.
And so two of the considerations with this plan. One, this is only one of the buckets where the money can be spent, and so we don't want to overcommit funds to this bucket when once we have more guidance from Treasury. We might decide that there are other priorities or other needs as well. And secondly, to sort of amplify something that, Christy mentioned, if we use this money to bring those revenue levels back to 2019, for 21, 22, 23, and that used all the money. In 2024, if we weren't back in actuality to those levels of 2019, we would effectively, we would have eliminated the cash, the budget shortfall we had in 2021, but we would have just moved it to 2024. And so we don't want to be in a position where, when we're done using this money, we're going to need some form of significant tax increase because revenues aren't where, we hope they would be or aren't, back to 2019 levels. So the thought is revenue, replace lost revenue to a level that we believe that at the end of this program will actually return to so that we don't create a future deficit. And so it's, pull out the crystal ball, walk on the tightrope, do backflips on the balance beam. It's a lot of estimation and projection work.
But our plan will be, we will use all this money that's been allotted to us we're not going to let it expire and give it back.
Yes.
Right, right. So we feel, as the finance team, we feel that the priority use of this money is for revenue loss, but we would not recommend using the full amount for revenue loss because there's other things that it can be used for, and also for the reasons that Alan has described, which is similar to the concerns we have with continuing to use free cash to lower the tax rate. That at some point, further in the future, but at some point that money goes away and then it's on the taxpayer to make up that structural deficit. But, we don't really know. It could be used on a water project. Those can be, $1.5 million. It could be used, if the EDC comes up with some sort of relief program. There's just so many ways it can be used, and we don't have a lot of guidance, but we just want to put out there that initially, we think that it should be used for revenue loss, and this is how we would recommend in the first 2 years doing that.
Patrick, you have a question?
Yeah, I guess two questions, and apologies, Christy, if you already answered this before, but you mentioned you hadn't gotten that guidance yet. Have they given you a date yet as to when you expect that guidance? I think you said it was going to be the full period of time.
So 60 days would be in May.
Okay, sometime in May. Okay, and then my second question is, I think if I remember correctly, the monies we got last year had some guardrails around them about not being able to use them for previously budgeted or items. Do you anticipate that to be the same with this?
I don't know, but it's likely because they're really looking at, providing relief. However, obviously with revenue loss being one of the buckets, that speaks a little bit differently to how it is impacted to the budget.
Okay.
Okay.
So we just wanted, sorry, go ahead.
I guess just one last question to the board, maybe just something to consider. Of the 5 different criteria I think that they've outlined that this can be used for, would it be reasonable to kind of prioritize what we think those are? For example, do we think water and sewer and broadband are equal to or should be higher priority than COVID related costs? I don't know, right? I'm just wondering how we as a board should kind of try to work our way through. I do think that this is important. The revenue loss is certainly important, but how do we prioritize the others?
Well, so what we've said since the beginning is that the finance team would continue to provide recommendations to the board. And so this is an initial recommendation, but it's not the end of the discussion because we don't have the full guidance. So this is just really speaking to how we would recommend using it in the upcoming budget. And so I don't think this is the end of the discussion.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. And just 1 second, Ian, and just also for clarification, that as part of the rescue plan, there was an entirely separate allocation that's going direct to schools. And so that process and how the school department and the public schools will use those funds and how much is available is being worked out in a parallel path. Ian, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, it actually was a question, and Chris, I probably should have gone offline, but it just kind of, maybe you have this, if not, talk about it later, but there was one of the emails that were on from the DLS alert from Department of Revenue, I think came out yesterday, to our town email, or at least to mine. I think everyone may have got it, but it kind of was talking about, on behalf of the governor, lieutenant governor, and Secretary Heffernan, the COVID-related federal funding that is available or has already been claimed by the municipalities. I know we're talking about, this is kind of the new funding, which is the coronavirus local stability fund, I believe, that 5.6. And I know we've talked about this before, but the original, it was like it looks like there's about 1.7 to 1.691 million in the COVID relief municipal program. And I'm not sure if this is the one that was, for just costs incurred or something that.
I'm trying to find the email you're talking about.
I think it goes back to why I'm asking the question, just to frame it, is, we've used some of it, but a small percentage. But then I look through it has a list of every single, and it's a huge spreadsheet, but a list of all 351 cities and towns. And when I look, there's a lot of towns and cities that have basically exhausted that initial municipal program. And I guess the question is, should we look more? Are we maybe being too conservative in how we're using certain things by the rules? Like, we had $1 million, like I said, $1.7 million. I'm looking just because it's on the same page here. Worcester was allocated $16,388,350, and they've happened to spend $16,388,349. So they have $1 left of that funding.
And I'm sorry, I can't find, I don't see the email that you're talking about. So you're talking about the CARES Act money, I think.
I'm assuming that's what it is. They call it CVR.
So I don't know what it says that the town has spent, but it's fully encumbered. So, we won't be leaving money on the table.
Okay.
The majority of that money is being used through the school department related to reopening. And so we've actually had to ask other departments to sort of pause while the school's working on their reopening, because that's obviously very important. So, I don't know what, like I said, I don't know what that says, but it's fully encumbered. So we expect to spend all of it.
Perfect. Good answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to bring it up. I should have brought it up offline. I know it's confusing to people watching on TV, but I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I did.
No, but it's good to confirm that we're going to spend every penny.
Yes, exactly.
And not leave any money on the table, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Any final question on the budget side? If not, we can move towards. Oh, yeah, Sean.
So just one quick one. So I think, Christy, so what you're showing us here is basically saying that this jives with the budget that we are currently putting forward and wouldn't necessarily require any changes to the original budget that had been provided.
So the 490,000 would actually, so let me back up. So after the third quarter, we also went through all of our local receipts, and we had to lower our estimates by 340,000 based on how receipts were coming in. And so if we use that 490,000, we would increase our net increase to revenues is about $150,000. So that would be $150,000 in revenue that would provide the equivalent relief to the taxpayer. So it would lower that average single family increase slightly. And then also, just to let everyone know, and I think you've seen in the emails, is that we're continuing to watch what's happening with this at the state with the Chapter 70. We fully expect to receive the first year of the Student Opportunity Act based on what the governor has said and what the House Ways and Means is saying. But we're still unclear about the mitigation offset that the town was previously eligible for. And so we're continuing to work with our reps to understand that better. So I just wanted to give that update. And now, Alan, if you want to talk about the town meeting warrant. This is just an opportunity for you all, if you have any questions or anything that you want to go through. I will just mention that the poultry bylaw is still being reviewed by town council. And so I know that there's revisions that need to be made. And so the board will receive another version of that, but prior to closing the warrant at the next meeting.
Okay. So any articles of interest or discussion points at this point on this version of the town meeting warrant? Patrick.
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of questions. One is on Article 7D around the police cruisers. Christy, I know you and I had a couple of emails around about this, and I've done a little bit of homework here in regards to kind of the requirement around hybrid. I'd actually like to propose that this article be written so that we actually purchase 2 hybrid police cruisers under the Green Communities criterion. It's really important that I think we support the Climate Action Plan, the Sustainable Westborough, and the Green Communities. And today, the way that the criterion is written under the Green Communities is that the police cruisers are exempt from this criterion due to market availability. However, municipalities must commit to purchasing fuel-efficient cruisers when they become commercially available. And in fact, actually, Ford, at least one manufacturer today, is producing hybrid police cruisers that are actually superior, from all what they're saying, to non-hybrid cruisers. So I'd really like to see us move forward and support that Green Communities with a meaningful effort to get hybrid police cruisers. And I have some more data I can share with the whole board around this. I'd also further say, just another point of here is that there is a program in place, the Massachusetts Electric Vehicle Incentive Program, which helps eligible public entities acquire electric vehicles and install charging stations for their fleets. And my understanding also is that, and I don't have all the history on this, but I'd love to hear more about it, is that Westborough was also awarded a 2020 grant for $153,876 for LED lighting and hybrid vehicle purchases. So I don't know what the status is of that, but I'd love to understand how and hopefully make this warrant article more specific to hybrid.
So just a question, Patrick, as I read it and I thought the presentations we had gotten earlier and in the article information, it says that the department will, when possible, purchase hybrid vehicles. And although they're more expensive, Ford estimates they'll save whatever. So I guess it seems like that's the intention of the article, if they're available. I know to your first question, maybe Christy can answer better, is that I think we purchased one, but we're having trouble getting access to them because they're not available. But I'm not sure if that is accurate. I'm echoing here too, so I apologize.
Yeah, we have purchased them. I'm just pulling up the email. Our 2021 Explorer has the Ford EcoBoost engine. The 2020 Tahoe has the Chevy EcoTech engine. Both are fuel efficient. We just actually are going through our first Green Community report, and all of our vehicles comply. And they're about to take delivery of a hybrid. So, we already have a policy. The board already has a policy that requires us to follow the criterion 4 of the Green Communities Act. And so it's not specific to hybrid, because if it's not available, then if it was specific to hybrid, they wouldn't be able to purchase the vehicle. So. And then in terms of electric vehicles, I mean, we've had conversations with with members of the Climate Action Task Force, and they understand that we don't have the infrastructure in place currently to have electric vehicles, because we don't have very many charging stations in town. And so one of the things that we talked about with the Climate Action Task Force members at the senior leadership level was working through that as one of the immediate action items, is to identify where we might put EV charging stations. So we are aware of the program, but we don't have the infrastructure in place currently to charge the vehicles. So
question on the availability. So as the article is written right now, it certainly leaves the flexibility that if it's not available, go buy a non-hybrid. My question is the availability, when we go out to purchase these things, is it, hey, we go out for that purchase in day one, if it's not available, we then go to the next option? Or is it something where we know that the availability, we can order something and 3 months out, we can get it, and that, that's sufficient? I'm concerned that that kind of is a little bit of a loophole for us to get hybrid vehicles into our fleet, more of them. And I would really like to try to make every effort possible to meet that initiative.
Well, I guess my perspective on this, you definitely raised some interesting points as far as the availability goes. The hybrid cruiser that we've yet to take in delivery of was voted on at town meeting last year in 2020. And so the delivery window for that vehicle is over 12 months. And so I think that, when we look at, the logistical needs of managing a fleet, and availability of vehicles and enough vehicles in service, and the fact that, one of these vehicles is replacing a vehicle in the fleet with reliability issues and safety issues, that, I think we need to, give flexibility to know that if we need a cruiser in less than 12 months, and it's going to take 12 months to get a hybrid vehicle, that doing something with an EcoBoost or a flex fuel that meets the criteria of, the Green Communities Act without being specifically a hybrid, we should have that flexibility to make that purchase. I don't think there's I'm not sensing, or I'm not comfortable with a sort of a cut and dry rule, given that there are factors here that, that are, beyond our control as a board and beyond the control of the police department at the time they go to make the purchase. And so a reasonable period of time to wait for a hybrid is fine, to the point where, we're not keeping other vehicles in service that are, too expensive to maintain or unsafe.
Sure, so if I could speak again, Alan? Yep. Sure, absolutely. I don't want to leave the force without the right vehicles. I mean, that's really important that they have what they need to get their job done. But you raise an interesting point, and I wasn't aware of it. And maybe this is a deeper conversation we should have on a future board meeting. Am I to understand that we are right now short a vehicle, a hybrid vehicle that's been pending for 12 months? And I guess what's the status of that? Is that if we've contracted to get a vehicle, when can we expect to take delivery? That is actually kind of shocking, and I can certainly understand the reason for the wording in the warrant if in fact that has been the history so far, but it does raise a question around, how are we pursuing that problem?
So I would say that that's not how we obtain vehicles. I mean, often you'll hear from, especially public safety, that it can take several months to obtain a vehicle, and so they'll keep the previous, unless a vehicle is in an accident and totaled or something, they would keep the older vehicle in service, and then until they accept delivery of the new vehicle, and then that vehicle would either go to auction or would be transferred to a different department.
So we're not risk exposed right now by not having a vehicle. That's helpful to know, but that also kind of neutralizes part of your point, Alan. So I guess I get it. I understand there's need to be flexible here, but we need to make this move at some point, and I just don't see a reason that we wouldn't do everything we can to be a leading community in the area. You look at the map of green communities in Massachusetts, and roughly 90% of the towns are now green communities, which is fantastic. But I'm hopeful that Westborough can also lead the charge with our fleet and move towards more of these green vehicles. And it's great to hear that we've already started down that path. So those are my thoughts. Whether or not I've convinced the rest of the board or not, you guys can all weigh in here.
Well, I guess, Patrick, my question is, what I guess I'm not sure what would be different. Do you want to make the motion that it, I guess, requires that hybrid, no matter what? I guess my thing is what
Yes.
I think the plan is that is our plan, unless it's not feasible.
Right, but then there's the, that term feasible is subjective, right? So what is feasible? And we just heard that right now we're waiting on a cruiser for 12 months, but we're able to supplement by using cruisers that are already in the fleet to make do until we do take receipt of that. So if that is the case and we're able to move along without any problems, then I would say fine, use that same tactic and for lack of a better word, force the issue, buy hybrid vehicles, and when they become available, we will roll off of our old vehicles.
I just think that, we need to trust, first of all, the department heads to follow the policy that you've already established. And that policy is exactly what you're describing, that they would pursue those types of vehicles unless they can't, which is what we've been doing since we became a green community. And then I would just also add that, this was fully vetted by the Capital Expenditure Planning Committee, who was also aware of the policy. So I think, for the board to make this decision without any discussion with them or with the chief, I have concerns about that.
I would love to hear from the chief. I wasn't part of, as everybody knows, I'm new on the board, so I wasn't part of those previous discussions. So I'm certainly eager to learn and hear that perspective, but I haven't heard I think a point yet that really warrants not being more forceful on this topic, because if we can make do today with these long lead times, then regardless if it's a hybrid vehicle or not, then why not move forward with a hybrid vehicle? Make that mandate.
But I think we are. I guess I'm confused.
Right.
I'm not.
The purchasing policy would say go with hybrid, unless, our own policy as a board is that the purchase would be hybrid unless there was some extenuating circumstances where that was not possible, right? And that's a pretty high bar to move off of a hybrid vehicle to a non-hybrid. So I guess the question is would you be comfortable with a modification to the warrant that refers to that this purchase would be in line with the policies in regard to hybrid vehicle purchase?
So I think that's what it's already doing. I think if I heard Christy correctly, that's what it's already doing, and I'm glad to hear that the article is in alignment with an existing policy. That's good, but today the Green Commission basically stated that by 2018, the state of Massachusetts was going to be 50% on hybrid. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to replace DPW trucks and things like that with hybrid because they don't exist. And if they did, they're probably really expensive. I'm talking about, how do we get the rest of our fleet as quickly as possible to hybrid? They are available. They are available maybe with long lead times. And I'm not hearing, and again, my vote would be no on this article as right now if it was to purchase a non-hybrid vehicle. We need to start moving in that direction more aggressively, is my point. I think we're all aware of the climate issues out there today. That's the reason why these committees have been formed. And I'm hearing loud and clear, that we need to be really aggressive, whether you watch, local news, national news, or whatnot. We need to move more quickly in this direction.
Yeah, Patrick, I guess I absolutely agree with you, and that's the policy that we have.
But it leaves the loophole in around buying a non-hybrid vehicle. So I get that there's a policy, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong here. I would imagine the warrant would supersede the policy, and the policy would have to be refreshed based on how the warrant is voted on. I don't know, do we bring it back into committee and have them rewrite a policy so that we can then rewrite the warrant? That seems a little backwards to me.
The policy goes along with how the purchasing takes place. So the warrant just allows the use of the money, and then we have to follow our policies. So it's not a loophole. It's just the way that the green communities lay it out as part of their vehicle criteria to make it possible for communities like ours to go through processes and follow fleet replacement programs as we've established them.
So let me ask it a different way. Are we at risk if we were to place an order for a hybrid vehicle? Are we at risk of not having a sufficient police fleet while we wait for that vehicle? If currently we're waiting on a vehicle that's 12 months, is it reasonable for us to wait for a hybrid vehicle for 12 months?
I'm not going to say we're at risk. I mean, it's part of our fleet replacement plan. I also don't know that we're waiting for a vehicle for 12 months. I think it was approved in November. So.
Okay. Oh.
So I just don't think it's an unreasonable thing to say that let's make all of our purchases that are possible hybrid. And this one is possible. They do exist. They can be ordered, and the state has provided the means by which we can make those orders.
I agree, and I guess I'm just confused. I think that's what we're doing. And that's why the latest police cars are hybrid that we've ordered, that we're waiting on. We didn't buy anything that wasn't hybrid because of the policy. So this would follow that same policy, is my understanding.
Okay, I had heard EcoBoost. Those are not hybrid vehicles.
No, that was only in the situation where hybrid wasn't available.
Okay, right. So that's
and as you're pointing out, hybrids are available.
Right. So, Ian, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the orders that have been placed have actually been currently already hybrid vehicles?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding. What came out of November, which was something we had pushed to November, not in June, because of the not being sure on the budget, but that purchase, I believe, was and is a hybrid vehicle.
Okay, I mean, so I just think it's further reason to just make the language very clear that we will only purchase hybrid vehicle. It's not an if, it's available because they are available. So, Alan, that would be my final statement on it. I think that's just important.
Okay, I mean, I understand. I'm happy to put it to the committee to see if there's a consensus that we should change the wording.
I guess one comment, I think we have guidelines that have been created for these types of purchases, and we require them to be followed. I guess the question is, I would rather change the guidelines than one-off change the wording on this article. I would rather just say, or put the vote out there as then everything we purchase, that's commercially available has to be hybrid, rather than just say, hey, for this police cruiser article, we ought to make both of these hybrid. Guaranteed.
Okay.
Yeah, this article is specific to just these two cruisers. It's not the whole. Yeah. It's not the whole policy. That's an excellent point.
Well, yeah, I'd rather follow the guidelines that have already been provided than go against the guidelines or go above and beyond the guidelines, that other groups have worked with us to create, I guess would be my point.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like I would expect both of these vehicles to be hybrid unless they just stop making those.
Okay. Ian, any thoughts?
No, I guess my one thought would be, it seems there's confusion here. I mean, maybe we just need to take a look at the policy, I think as Sean said, and let's just review it as a board to make sure that the policy covers what we're doing here. I understand, Patrick, I don't want to act like I'm fighting you. I agree that it should be hybrid. I just don't know that going and whether putting it on the warrant is necessary or makes sense, or is it making sure, as Sean said, the policy is robust and followed, and that policy was put together by our Green Community or Sustainable West. I'm not sure which one put together, but the group that is kind of driving the policies and applying for grants and all stuff for the town. So, which has been allowed us to get grants for hybrid, et cetera. So I want to make sure we don't do anything that goes against what those groups have put together. So maybe it is just if we get a chance that we can, as a board, look at those policies and, put this on the agenda for the next meeting to just make sure we're comfortable with it.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll take a look at the policy and reassess at our next meeting. Okay. We did receive for the warrant a couple questions from our town moderator on the town seal. I don't know. I don't have his email up. I don't know, Christy, if you do. Hold on. Okay, he was feeling that it might need some additional clarity as to whether this this committee is, the charge is to review the history of the town seals, to consider proposing a new town seal, but then to propose a process for creating a new town seal. So as John was saying that in his email, it isn't clear, if there isn't clarity about which outcome the selectmen think is best, complete design of a proposed new town seal or proposed process for complete design, then there could be many hours of meetings, and I think some frustration of committee members who didn't think that's why they signed up for the committee, which could be squandered by wrangling consensus between two possible paths. So I guess he's asking for clarification to say, is the goal here to come back with a proposed seal, you decide if the seal should change and come back with a proposed design, or assess if the seal should be changed and make a recommendation in that regard, and if so, to propose a process for creating the town seal?
The way that it's written is that the committee would review the history of the town seal. Would review the history of the town seal, would consider proposing a new town seal after they heard from the public, that they would hold multiple public forums and then provide recommendations that may include a proposed process. So the way that it's written, there's really nothing in there that says that they will propose the new town seal. They would just propose a process for it if they decide that we should pursue changing the town seal.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was our intent, was that this was, putting it in the hand of a committee to engage with the community to decide whether they wanted to move forward with it. And if so, they could describe a process that we would go about to get it, and so I guess the question is, if we think we need clarity, let's make it clear. Because I guess if there's ambiguity in that they think their job is to design a new town seal, that's not what was the intent of the past board when we put this out there. It wasn't about who made a decision they were designing a new seal. It was to basically go through the process, gather public input, and decide whether to approach town meeting with a move to design a new town seal.
Okay. I mean, I'd be willing to have a conversation with John to see if he feels there's some wording clarification towards that.
Well, does the board feel like it's unclear?
If the board feels it's unclear.
Yeah, I do, because I'm just reading it again, and my understanding of how it's written right now is that the committee would come back they would consider proposing a new town seal after a public process. Is not the committee the process?
The purpose of the committee, as it was drafted, was to look at whether or not we should change the town seal and then propose a process for changing it if they decide it should be changed.
Okay.
So I guess it's to consider proposing whether a new town seal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the board didn't want to take a position on whether or not the board initially wanted to hold its own public process before taking a position on whether or not the town seal should be changed. Given sort of the pandemic and looking at the way that the town of Natick had done it, it seemed that it would be more productive to have town meeting decide if they wanted this committee to do that work. But to make sure that there's a lot of public engagement, they included the multiple public forums. And so, I mean, I think that was the intent. I'm not saying that if it's unclear, then we should be clear. And if that's not the intent anymore, it can change. But that's, I think, was the original intent of the article.
My sense is there could be some clarification because it's to consider proposing a new town seal after a public process. Sounds like they're going to propose a seal, right? Is instead of, saying to consider, making a recommendation as to whether the town should change its town seal. And so maybe just wordsmithing a little bit there would make it clear that the first recommendation would be, should we consider, should we change, are we making a recommendation that we should change the town seal? And if the answer to that is yes, then maybe we'll also propose, or hopefully they will propose, a process by which to get a new design. And just make it clear that they're not going to come back and say, oh, we think we need a new town seal and here it is, right? Very different effort. So I think I'm comfortable that I think if we do some wordsmithing in the first part, we can make that more clear.
That makes sense to me, Alan.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. If it's confusing, let's make it clear.
Right, and I would just say we're all in agreement that a proposal for a new town seal is not coming out of this article.
Correct.
It's just whether or not we should consider one. Okay.
Correct. And that would go back to town meeting. And really the reason that we did it this way was, trying to, if you just brought it without, because we didn't have the chance to hold public hearings, whatever, and just brought this town meeting, it would be the debate on town meeting floor without public hearings. What we've learned is that, having public input in advance and really listening to various groups allows for town meeting to run more efficiently. And that's what we're trying to get here. And, thought that going to I'll call kind of an independent representation appointed by the moderator made sense. And it really was that first phase of, not going to town meeting right away and saying, vote to change the seal or not. It's really, let's vote to put a committee in place to kind of go through a process to evaluate whether or not to bring that forward to town meeting. And then when they're done, hopefully in a short time frame, they come back to town meeting and say, now's the time. We've done all this public input. This is what we've learned. Here's the results. We think it's time to change it. And here's the process that we would employ to change it. Again, thinking the last time it was changed was the process was to give it to the art students at the high school as a competition for design. That may or may not be the solution, probably not from what we've heard from others, that they don't think it was the appropriate way to do it in the past. But again, that was 1967. So
I just want to, so we're 2 weeks away from closing the warrant, and we've been talking about the warrant article since January. So I think that, if we're going to make changes to this, they need to happen quickly because the most recent version of the warrant has gone to town council for review so that we can be ready to close at your next meeting. So if someone is going to take this offline and work on it, that's great. But just if we can do it sooner than later so we can incorporate it into the potentially final version would be great.
Okay.
We have to close this in next meeting.
Next meeting, yes.
Yes.
Switching off that, so I think, Alan, you volunteered. Can you do that with John quickly?
Yep.
I just had one question on the draft warrant, the two articles at the end. Just in the draft that was in our packet, unless I have an old draft, I think the second article.
I fixed it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And actually there's an additional article that's been, that Shelby had mentioned at one of your previous meetings about clarifying the bylaw related to the Trustee of Soldiers Memorial Committee. And so I did run that by town council and there is clarification needed. So that's just a wording issue. So, so I'll be sending that out in a future draft, but it's just providing clarification so that it's consistent with the state law.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on this draft of the warrant? Patrick.
Yeah, I got a couple of other articles I just wanted to talk through a little bit too as well. Article 9, body cameras, just a question on this. Well, the $26,302, is that a town meeting vote each year? Or has there been has anybody looked at if it's a multi-year contract, could it be a multi-year contract so we're not voting on that every year for the 26,000?
So you're not voting on a contract. The reason that it's on the warrant is because it's the first year, and so we wanted to put it out specifically to the community. As I had said, it's going to be, the recurring costs are within the police department budget.
Okay. And then on Article 23, which is the bylaw for town meeting, Christy, you and Alan, I sent some language over. I made an attempt to try to help clean that up. I don't know if that's something that we should look at now, if it's appropriate, or how you want to handle that. But that particular language in that article is very confusing, and I can see why it needs to be cleaned up. So I've just made a recommendation as to how to do it. I'll just briefly mention kind of the two things, fundamental things that I did in the suggested language was I moved the annual town election to its own section within that article, because that kind of got intermingled with the annual town meeting and special town meeting. And then I try to clarify, Alan, based on what you had said, the intent was around the quorum requirement under fall town meeting, special town meeting, and annual town meeting. And then, Christy, absolutely, I think it's appropriate to bring that to the town moderator and have him take a look at it and see what further changes should also be applied if necessary. But just made to try to make an attempt to help out with that.
So, I mean, I don't know if you're asking me. I did receive your changes. I don't know how they sort of, we talked about a marked up version, which would be easier to look at. But I think in terms of the inconsistency and that we needed to correct related to the quorum requirement, I think the way that the article is drafted does that. So it's really up to the board if they want to make further changes. I don't know if you want to
Ian?
show them the draft.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to see it. I'm not sure I understand. I think the way I read it, that the annual election is part of annual town meeting and it's kind of in our town meeting warrant. So I think we'll call it town. I think that's the way it's worded in the bylaw today. So I guess I'm not sure I understand, Patrick, your proposal. I guess we just need to see it. I don't know that I fully understand how we're separating that out.
Yeah, Alan, you're the chair here.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure the election needs to be separated out. I think, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, your concern is that it was there's annual town meeting and then there's special town meetings. In our fall town meeting, well, it's a special town meeting. We have specific wording in our bylaws with respect to quorum so that in operation, so it operates more like annual town meeting because it's regularly scheduled every year as opposed to a special town meeting. And Patrick's concern is it wasn't clear that with annual town meeting and fall town meeting that we do not have a quorum requirement. Whereas for any other special town meeting, we do have a quorum requirement of 50.
So I'm not trying to change the intent. I did have some legal questions around that intent, and Christy was kind enough to get those questions answered for me. But to Ian's question around town elections, the way that the current language is written, it's very specific to the election itself. It's not, at least the way I read it, it is not about the town election article inside the warrant at town meeting. And the way I've written it is the annual town election of town officers and other matters to be determined by ballot shall be held the second day in March. And it's same language. It's just moved out into its own section specific to town elections as opposed to intermingling it with the town meeting itself. But again, I'll defer to Alan. I mean, I would be more than happy to share the recommendation and bring that to, if you all are, amenable to it, I would be more than happy to talk with John or have him come on and we can all talk with him about the proposed. And Christy, I don't have a Word version of the document, so I can't make a red line version. If you send that to me, I'd be more than happy to provide a red line version. I just think we need to make it very clean and very clear as to what this is because they're pretty specific and pretty important events.
Right. So the changes in this article are really around codifying the board's ability to set the date and time of annual town meeting and fall town meeting and the election, and to codify in our town bylaws the authority that we have under state law. So it's clear we're not in conflict with that, and we allow ourselves to have that flexibility. We really haven't changed the wording around quorums and quorum requirements. And given where we are with respect to town meeting and the complicated process of changing the bylaw in a way that we don't have an unintended consequence, right now my gut feeling would be to proceed with the changes with respect to how our meetings get scheduled and when they're scheduled, and that if we then still, and I'm not saying we don't need, but if we feel that we need to adjust the wording with respect to clarifying quorum requirements, that we take the time to do it, and maybe that's something we would address at fall town meeting.
The article, there's Article 25, I'm sorry, Article 24 is specific to clarifying the quorum requirements.
Okay, oh, that's right.
Yes, it is.
So that is there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Christy, that's an excellent point. And I was just, so, I mean, I would like to share with the board my edited version because I think it cleans it up a lot. It simplifies it.
If you could share that with the board or get you a Word copy and have you redline it, that would be helpful.
Do you want me to share what I have written right now, or do you want me to get the Word version so I can create a
I would do
version?
I would do both if possible, and then we can wrap this up at our next meeting.
Okay, so let me quickly share this out.
So just not to be complicated, but that means that at your next meeting, you would have the discussion, and I suppose it would follow with a review by town council. So you would close the warrant subject to review by town council of that article?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on a moment.
I guess my take here is if we're going to change this now, my recommendation would pull the whole thing off the town meeting warrant and put it on the fall. Because I just don't think we have time to try to do all this, and I think that you have unintended consequences.
Yeah, I'm worried about that too, just because if we made a change subject to review by town council and town council came back and said, whoa, 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 we are up against, we're going to end up pulling it off the warrant anyways because we're passing over it because we're up against the posting period for town meeting.
Right. Well, yeah, and I think what happened here, I mean, this is a change of intent to the bylaw. I don't know that it's a clarification because, you know, what the intent of this was to give the selectmen the ability, more flexibility, you know, cleaning it up because of things we've had before and, you know, eliminating some of these things at times, whatever. So really it was about flexibility. It wasn't deciding that the annual town election was not part of an annual town meeting anymore or whatever. So I guess I'm throwing it in there now to me is just.
No change in intent. As a matter of fact, the language, a lot of the language is the same. It's just a separation to clean it up so it's easier to understand the difference between annual town election, annual town meeting, fall meeting, special town meeting.
But an annual election is part of annual town meeting, is my understanding by reading the bylaw.
Well, it follows together, but like this year, it was called on two separate warrants because they were so far apart.
And my recollection is they're very closely related time-wise during the course of the year, right? But they are two separate events. So
that's not how it reads now, though. I mean, it can be two warrants, but it's the annual meeting for the election of town office and all the matters to be determined by ballot, whatever. And then it says all other, in the end of that paragraph, which is just about elections, are that all other business of the annual meeting shall be considered at the adjournment thereof as follows. And then it goes into the town meeting place. So is it just taking that paragraph and calling it town election?
yeah, basically moving the town election piece and just calling out the requirements for when the town election will be held, how long it will be held, et cetera, those pieces of it. And then the section related to annual town meeting would be specific to its requirements, when it's held, you know, what time it is, all those good things. And then it also has a clarification on the quorum requirement, to be or not to be, right, per the expectation of the board. Same with special town and fall town meeting. So it certainly meets the intent that I think was the current. It just cleans it up so that it's easier to understand. But I don't want to risk. I don't want to cause a problem with you know, getting this ready for annual town meeting. So if you all that are more seasoned veterans feel that this is going to cause undue risk to the rest of the warrant, you know, I'll retract this ask, and we can certainly look at it for the fall, and then maybe we can take it through some more rigorous discussions as time permits. But it's fairly clean. It's not a big change. I've just separated the pieces out.
I guess I'm more comfortable reevaluating simplification of the wording, or realignment of the wording in the fall, and proceeding with the two warrants as they are. I think we need to establish that flexibility. COVID-19 has sort of taught us that. And Article 24, which changes Article 24 on the warrant, which changes Article 2, Section 5 of the bylaws, is specific to make sure that it's clear that town meeting doesn't have a quorum.
Right. My suggestion would be to strike Section 5 altogether of it and include that language in Sections 2 and 3.
Right, but the problem is I haven't looked to see what other cross-references there are, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's my concern. If you start doing that now, we're just going to
open a can of worms. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that. Fine. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm glad we hashed that through.
I appreciate you guys' patience. You know, I'm just going through these things and certainly understanding them at every opportunity to dig into them. So thank you.
No, appreciate it. You know, when I joined the board, there was one meeting between my election and town meeting. You've had a little more time to dive in, and so, clearly you're swimming in the deep end, and that's appreciated. Okay, anything else on the town warrant?
I'm good. Thank you.
Christie?
I just wanted to add that, I already said it about the poultry bylaw, that's going to get cleaned up.
Yeah.
So we're continuing to work on that, and we'll want to walk through that at your next meeting because town council's made some changes since
Okay,
the
excellent.
last
Sean?
drafts.
Oh, sorry. And just quickly, I think the poultry bylaw just needs to become Article 26, correct?
I believe it does. Yeah, well.
Got rid of an article.
That's one way to make town meeting move faster is to skip numbers, because that
There you
sounds like
go.
you're much further along. Okay. Is there anything else on the? Yeah.
Sorry, just on these are on the last two. So the Article 20, the new Article 27, Article 27, the golf safety netting. It's a raise and appropriate or transfer from retained earnings. Just, do you know what the?
Transfer from retained earnings.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
I'm okay with that then. Okay, perfect.
Right. And then the title of Article 28 is corrected already in the next version, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if nothing else on the town meeting warrant, we'll move into the next item, which is approval of minutes from February 9th and February 23rd, 2021. And thank you, Sela, for prompt preparation of the minutes for us. It's good that we stay current. It's good for us as a board operating and good for the public as well. So do I have a motion with respect to the February 9th minutes?
I'll move the approval of the minutes of February 9th.
I'll
Okay,
second.
excellent. Any questions, comments, changes, corrections? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go for roll call vote. Before I do, I'll remind that town council has advised us that board members who are not present at a meeting do not need to abstain. And so we'll head to the roll call vote. Welch.
Welch, yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the minutes are passed for February 9th by a vote of 4-0-0, 4 being present, and for our meeting of the 23rd of February.
I'll move the
I have a
approval. I'll move the approval of the meeting minutes for February 23rd, 2021 as presented.
So moved. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Sean. And any comments, corrections? Hearing none, we'll move to the roll call vote. Welch.
Yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So those minutes are approved. Vote of 4-0-0, 4 being present. Next on our agenda is discussion and vote employee time off related to COVID-19 pandemic. Christie, you have the floor.
Last year, when the pandemic initially hit, the board voted to allow a carryover of 1 week and vacation time and 2 personal days for all employees. And so that's something that the board did in recognition of the difficulties of taking time during the pandemic. And so this we've discussed in recognition of all the work that employees have done during the pandemic, giving a holiday on the Friday before Labor Day. So closing town hall for that day. So town hall obviously has a half day on that day. Some other buildings such as DPW and senior center have a full day. And so we would recommend that we close the town buildings that are non-essential for that Friday, and that we give one, that you authorize me to negotiate with the unions to potentially give an additional day off that would be a floating floating personal day for the unions. That's the first piece of it. The second piece of it is I'm also requesting that you authorize me to allow up to 1 week of vacation carryover for employees who have been significantly impacted in their responsibilities due to COVID-19. So I gave some examples. Some are vacancies that we've had in departments that have kept employees in the office unable to use vacation time. Vaccine clinic has taken up a lot of time, grant writing related to the pandemic. So I have had some employees ask me about a potential carryover. We did review all the employee records, and we found that employees are taking time, but there are some who were significantly impacted.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Any questions from the board? Okay.
I just
Patrick?
got one. Christy, I'm thinking I need to recuse myself from this.
Yeah, I think you probably should. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. If no additional discussion, I'll entertain the motions.
Okay, I'll try this. I will move to approve granting non-union employees one additional holiday on Friday, September 3rd, 2021, and further to authorize the town manager to negotiate with all unions the provision of this holiday, or for essential employees, the equivalent of one personal day. And I further move to authorize the town manager to grant carrying over of up to 1 additional week of vacation time for employees who demonstrate that their job responsibilities were significantly increased by the pandemic and or vacancies within their department.
And I will second that motion. Any further discussion?
Chrissy, thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is important to recognize all of our town employees.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, roll call vote. Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Keough?
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes on a vote of 3-0-1 for being present. Okay. Final item on the open portion of our meeting is issues and correspondence. And so I will go around the picture tiles here and start with Patrick.
I guess I would just say I enjoyed watching the Rubber Duck Derby this weekend. So hopefully you all caught that. Great event, very creative. I don't know what the number is as far as they brought in for donations for their scholarships. So I look forward to hearing about that, but great event. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
I have nothing this week.
Sean?
I'm all set as well, Alan. Thank you.
Okay. I have a couple of very quick things. One, a reminder to the community that the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust is running an emergency rental assistance program for Westborough residents who have a financial impact related to COVID-19. There are some very minimal eligibility requirements, but they're there nonetheless. So information is available on the top of the COVID-19 pages on the town website. There are also posters and information sheets available at Westborough Youth and Family Services, at the public library, and on the counter in front of the Selectmen's office and the town manager's office in Town Hall. Information is also being distributed by the public schools and the food bank. It's an online application, and there are people available to assist folks who need help with the application process and collecting and getting the documents in place. And so that program is underway. So if you or someone you know has been severely impacted or financially impacted from COVID-19 and is having trouble with housing security as a renter, this program is available. Please check your eligibility, and if you think you're eligible, apply. If you're not sure if you're eligible, contact us. We'll help you determine that as well and get you through the application process. Okay. And that's end of issues and correspondence. Nice and brief. Thank you, team. And I will entertain a motion to move into executive session.
I'll move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with
So we don't actually need strategy with respect to collective bargaining anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I will move to enter an executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate at 0 Ruggles Street and 23 Spring Road, and to approve executive session meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay. Johnson moves. Keough seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, roll call vote. Welch.
Welch, yes.
Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
Keough.
Keough, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So we will go into executive session. By a vote of 4-0-0, as chair, I determine that public discussion of these items will have a detrimental impact on the town's negotiating position, and we will not be reconvening in public session after the executive session. So thank you, Westborough TV, again, for your great service. And thank you, folks who are watching and participating in the affairs of our town.